Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Meron, and coming up in today's newscast, dozens are killed and over 150 injured in a tragedy at Lag BaOmer celebrations on Mount Meron. Next, what you need to know for surviving a possible stampede in the future. And finally, restrictions placed on annual Christian Holy Fire Festival celebrations after the Meron tragedy. A national day of mourning sweeping across the country today, following what many say is the worst peacetime tragedy in Israel's history. 45 people killed, including children and teens, and dozens more injured in a disastrous stampede over the weekend at Mount Meron. And the incident coming at the close of what was supposed to be a celebration. Well over 100,000 Orthodox Jewish worshippers from all over the world taking advantage of Israel's coronavirus turnaround and celebrating the holiday of Lag BaOmer at Mount Meron, Israel's north. Mount Meron being the gravesite of 2nd century Jewish sage Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But the festival, including singing, dancing, and lighting large bonfires, ended in tragedy. In early hours Friday morning, thousands of worshippers crowding a narrow passage at the holy site, resulting in an apparent stampede.
We were standing and waiting for our friends. We were going to go inside for the dancing and stuff. And all of a sudden we saw paramedics from Madda and whatever running by, like mid-CPR on kids. And then one after the other started coming out, ambulances. Then we understood like something's going on here. And we just went to the side as the ambulances were driving in and out, and we waited until we were able to slowly get out.
אני הייתי שם בדיוק ברגעים כשזה קרה למטה, בצד, וזה התחיל מכמה כוננים שרצו, ואז היה סוג של אנדרלמוסיה, שוטרים, צרחות, בלגן. וזה היה נראה משהו כמו אחרי חצי שעה, כמו זירת פיגוע של התאבדות או משהו כזה, אנשים בלי סוף יצאו משם על מיטות.
כן, הייתי שם בתוך הדוח היה שם איזה דוח של 6,000-700,000 איש, לא היה מקום כמעט לזוז, ואנשים נפלו על הרצפה, כמו נפלו מאוד על הרצפה.
We received information about a lot of injuries. We went to the ground zero. The injuries start to came, and we start the first aid. Unfortunately, at the end, we have 44 deaths. And above 100 injuries in different severity.
In the end, the tragedy actually killing 45 and injuring over some 150. And among those killed, now all identified, at least 10 are children under age 18, including 2 sets of brothers. And at least 9 are foreign nationals, 6 holding U.S. citizenship, 1 being from Argentina and 2 being Canadian. Israeli officials, meanwhile, declaring Sunday as an official national day of mourning. Flags on state buildings hung at half-mast, public ceremonies and massive funeral services are being held, and leaders in Israel as well as from around the world are sending their condolences.
זה יום קשה וכואב. אסון שובר לב. תפילותינו ומחשבותינו נתונות אל הפצועים ואל משפחות ההרוגים והנעדרים באסון הנורא שאירע אמש בהר מירון. זוהי השעה לחבק את המשפחות, לתת יד לכל המחפשים אחר יקיריהם, לאמץ את הפצועים אל ליבנו, ולבכות יחד, לבכות יחד.
אסון הר מירון הוא מן האסונות הכבדים ביותר שפקדו את מדינת ישראל. אנחנו דואבים על הנספים, ליבנו עם המשפחות, וגם עם הפצועים שאנחנו מייחלים להחלמתם המלאה. היו פה מראות קורעי לב, אנשים שנמחצו אל המוות, כולל ילדים. אנחנו נערוך בדיקה יסודית, רצינית ומעמיקה, כדי להבטיח שאסון כזה לא יישנה. ואני מבקש ביום ראשון להכריז על יום אבל לאומי. בואו נתייחד כולנו עם היגון של המשפחות, ותפילה לשלומם של הפצועים.
Now, as for around the world, those sending messages of solidarity and best wishes to Israel, including leaders from all over Europe, Canada, the United States, and many in the Arab world, like in Jordan, Bahrain, and the UAE. Queen Elizabeth of England sending a letter to Israeli President Rivlin, U.S. President Biden calling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issuing a statement of condolences and offering assistance, and the Pope asking for prayer from the international community as well.
Con tristezza esprimo la mia vicinanza alla popolazione di Israele per l'incidente avvenuto venerdì scorso sul monte Meron, che ha provocato la morte di 45 persone e numerose ferite. Assicuro il mio ricordo nella preghiera per le vittime di questa tragedia e per i loro familiari.
Even Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas sending a letter to President Rivlin expressing his sorrow for the disaster that caused dozens of deaths and that he is praying for the victims as well as for the recovery of the wounded. The tragedy in Mount Meron is an inconceivable freak accident, but the infrastructure and the masses of people gathering at Mount Meron every year on Lag BaOmer is a known issue, which begs the question, what needs to change? Joining me to discuss is former member of Knesset for the Yesh Atid Party and current Secretary General for the Confederation of United Zionists, Rabbi Dov Lipman, and former head of the Office of Israel's Chief Rabbi, Dov Halbertal. Rabbi Halbertal, thank you as well, and Rabbi Dov Lipman, thank you as well for joining us today. Now, this is an awful tragedy, of course. Rabbi Lipman, I wanted to start with you, though. Tell us how you were involved in the funeral planning and what's been your experience really getting approval for family members and outside of the country into Israel to see their loved ones' burials.
I have to tell you that with everyone talking about the negatives and what went wrong government-wise, there's something really positive that's been happening here as the Immigration Authority, together with the Health Ministry, with the Diaspora Affairs Ministry, all worked in tandem together with many of us who are involved in helping diaspora Jews and new Olim to Israel to have a really clear, clean, simple process to help these people get to Israel today. We have 37 family members landing today in Israel for the funerals. And it was a process which took a lot of effort, but a lot of working together. Thank God all of these families will not have to go through the full Corona protocol as usually is required. There's some basic things that they needed to do. But the most important thing is that Israel enabled them to get here, to be able to be here for the burials of their loved ones.
Rabbi Halbertal, have you been involved in any of the funeral practices? Or have you been to any of the funerals? What's your take on what happened and how this happened?
I wasn't involved directly. I know few families that my neighbors and others that I know that they lost their grandchild or a nephew or something like this. And I would have said that it's such a tragedy that there are no words. It's very difficult to express condolences. And I would have said that in such a case, as we say in the Jewish tradition, only God can comfort them.
All right, now I want to stay with you for a moment, Rabbi Halbertal, because you've worked with the government ministries, with rabbinate authorities as well. We've heard that changing anything at Mount Meron, where we've known for years that there are problems there with respect to infrastructure, we've heard that changing anything at the mountain is next to impossible because of various religious sects and their pressure that they have on maintaining the site. Do you think that anything will change now?
It will have to be changed. Nothing will stay the same. But I have to say a few words that I think people can be blamed right now without any investigation. I mean, let's start with the first chain of command, the police. I think three they had to resign in the spot, in the moment, 1 minute after all the tragedy occurred. I mean, the district command and the general command and the minister of internal security should have been fired or resigning in a moment, because they have the direct responsibility, at least the ministerial one, but it's certainly more than that. That's first. Second, I think the director or the chairman of the holy places had to resign in the moment, because he's the civil responsible on the place, and you cannot be in your task, in your place, when such a tragedy of 45 people dying in this place and so many wounded. Those had to be the norms, but it will not happen because we have no moral norms here, and it will have to be investigated. I don't think, as you said before, that it couldn't be changed.
It's not that it couldn't be changed. It's that, and you have just referenced some of the regional council heads and who govern Mount Meron and other religious areas, and you said that they should resign. Again, many of them are saying that they knew about these issues and they tried to change them, but were met with great obstacles from the Haredi community in that they didn't want anything to be changed without massive oversight. But Dov Lippman, Rabbi Lippman, I'd like to turn to you now for your take on this. What could be improved and how might we go about doing it?
I do have to be honest with you, Aaron, that it's difficult on the day when we're still in the middle of the funerals to be focusing on that aspect. We really are coming together as a people. I was that Friday at the Forensic Institute and saw a wide range of the Jewish people, from ultra-Orthodox to more modern, and even secular, all there suffering losses. So we are a unified people right now, and we have to get through this mourning process together. Having said that, we absolutely have to have a proper investigation to see exactly what was wrong, and we don't have to be afraid of saying that certain people are responsible and people absolutely losing their positions if they are responsible. I also have to mention the young people who we've lost are the ones who wanted to be so close to the rabbi's grave, the so spiritual, almost angelic young people that I'm hearing about. And I think we really have to go through that process first before we can have a clear mind to be able to really address it. But if you're asking specifically, 100%, there should never, ever be a situation where that many people are put into that small of an area without the proper safety measures that apply to any other event in the country. As a religious person, I'm saying we can never say that religion somehow should overcome the need for security. We just read in the Torah portions recently about living with Torah. We're supposed to, that's the number one priority. And therefore, as religious people, we have to make sure that's always the number one priority as well.
All right, Rabbi Dov Halbertal and Rabbi Dov Lippman, thank you again both so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Moving on now to the aftermath of the weekend Lag BaOmer tragedy. Israel hailing the heroic first responders at the scene of the deadly stampede in Mount Meron, while first responders in turn ask for the public's help. Chana Rifkin with the story.
Roughly 150 injured and dozens killed in the Mount Meron stampede. But while the victims have all been ultra-Orthodox Jews, Israeli citizens from all walks of life and religious sectors alike have been rallying and offering support. Druze villages in the north offering to host observant Jews who are unable to return to their own homes before the Sabbath. Then, many local Arab, Muslim, and Bedouin villages near Mount Meron likewise offering assistance to anyone who is injured or stranded after the tragedy, including setting up a refreshment station with water, fruit, and cold drinks for anyone in need. But beyond the immediate aftermath of the weekend crisis, injured Israelis still needing help, and primarily in the form of a blood infusion. First responder organization Magen David Adom then setting up blood donation stands across the country, with long lines forming at nearly every location, Israelis young and old, religious and secular, crowding the vans from open till close. Even Prime Minister Netanyahu making a donation as part of a campaign to push others to follow suit.
כמו רבים מאזרחי ישראל, באתי לתרום דם כאקט של הזדהות עם הפצועים וכאקט של הזדהות עם הטרגדיה הנוראית שקרתה כאן. ברגעי מבחן העם שלנו מתלכד, וזה מה שאנחנו עושים ברגע זה גם כן. אני אעשה הכל, ממשלת ישראל תעשה הכל לעזור למשפחות הנספים. אנחנו יודעים את הצער העמוק שלכם, אנחנו יודעים שעולמכם חרב, אנחנו נעזור לכם להשתקם בכל דרך ש...
Of course, as Mata reiterates, while the over 2,200 Israeli blood donations made on Friday alone do help, far more will be needed. Mata officials calling on the rest of the public to donate over the coming weeks too, explaining that a blood unit is only valid for 35 days after donation. So please, if you're local and able, try to find time to donate at a mobile center nearest you. And you can find where the centers will be by visiting Magen David Adom's website at www.mdais.org/blood-donation.
And now, speaking of Magen David Adom's emergency response at Mount Meron, Dr. Ro'i Babila was Magen David Adom's senior medical staff reporting to the tragedy on Mount Meron on Thursday night, and he signed off on 39 of the deaths. He joins us now. Dr. Ro'i Babila, thank you so much for being with us. Now, first, can you tell us about the events as it was unfolding, and were you there before as a precaution, or did you arrive at the scene after the incident began?
No, actually, I was the manager of the main clinic of Magen David Adom, which should bring medical services to all the crowd that come to the Hilula of Meron. And I was, during the day, Thursday, I was giving a routine services, medical services, which suit to this kind of event with such much of people, like dehydratations, headaches, small injuries, and things like that. And in one point at the night, suddenly we understand that something is going on unusual by witnesses. And really, a few minutes later, a lot of medical staff starting to bring to the clinic a lot of injured people with different kind of injury, from minor injury to major injuries, and also people with people during basic CPR, which was the first. We take them first, starting to take care of them, and started advanced CPR, which include medical treatment and intubation. Wow. And during that, we take care about people with major injury that we needed to sedate them and also intubate them.
Well, so now, Ro'i, I'm looking at these images that we're seeing on screen, and they're terrifying, really. Just seeing people flying back and forth with stretchers, and I understand that you saw a lot of the injuries there. I also understand that Magen David Adom is asking for blood donations staggered, that they don't want everybody donating now, but that they do want donations. Can you tell us about some of the injuries that you've seen and what the severity of the injuries that you've seen?
Yeah, the major injuries that we find in this mass casualty incident was crash injuries. Wow. We find a lot of people with crash injuries that we have to take them, as I said, with different levels of crash injuries, from minor people that are in full consciousness, with fractures, till the people that are doing CPR. And we needed to continue CPR. Fortunately, we saw in my clinic, we were two staffers that working on two people with CPR, and we succeed to bring them back pulse. And they were taken to the hospitals by ambulances or by ICU units, mobile, with pulse. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you did. I'm sure a lot of people walked out of Mount Meron safely thanks to you and other Magen David Adom paramedics. Dr. Roy Babila, thank you again so much for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
On another note, investigations will soon expose exactly how the tragedy stampede in Mount Meron could have been prevented. But as in all things, hindsight is 20/20. So what do you do if you're already in a stampede or in a crowd rush? The following is a short guide as detailed by crowd control specialist Paul Wertheimer. Number 1, stay on your feet. Try to maintain stable footing by staggering your legs for balance and putting your arms up like a boxer to create a separation between you and the next person, which helps protect your heart and your lungs from being overpowered. P.S. If you see somebody falling over or reaching up for help, help them stay on their feet too. Number 2, if you do fall and you can't get back up immediately, at least try not to lay on your belly or on your back. Curl up on your side to protect your vitals and your head, and try to get up or reach up for help as soon as possible. Expert Paul Wertheimer even suggests asking to be crowd surfed to safety if possible. 3, go with the flow. Try to conserve energy and move with the flow of foot traffic. You can also move diagonally or in a zigzag pattern, taking advantage of little pockets that form between people as they move. Just remember, if you drop something, leave it. Now, number 4, don't panic and stay alert. Try to signal to others with hand gestures and eye contact. And don't bother yelling, because unfortunately, in this situation, you will not likely be heard. And worse, if you yell and panic too much, you run the risk of fainting due to oxygen loss, which violates tip number 1. And finally, tip number 5, look for alternate exit routes or for the nearest safe space. Wertheimer explaining that while it's typically best to go towards the nearest exit, it's not safe if everyone is doing that at the same time. So consider an alternate exit even if it's further away. And if there is no exit, then just do your best to weave in a zigzag pattern away from the center of the crowd and towards immovable structures where the crowd has to part and where you can safely hide. Now, meantime, and in light of both the coronavirus and the tragedy at Mount Meron, Israeli police are putting restrictions on Christian worship in Jerusalem as well, ahead of the annual Holy Fire Festival. Police on Saturday taking extra precautions near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. This ahead of the arrival of thousands of Christian pilgrims for the annual Holy Fire ceremony. But as the ceremony set to begin just the day after a deadly stampede in Mount Meron, police got to work setting up barricades to handle the holiday crowds, especially as the Holy Fire ceremony was canceled last year due to the pandemic and has in previous years attracted crowds of at least 10,000 worshippers.
السنة اللي مرت كانت سنة كتير حزينة. أول سنة القدس بتكون مسكرة وكنيسة سبت الأيام بتكون مسكرة. سيدنا المترك نزل بس مع 4 خوارنة. كان الإشي كتير محزن. السنة هاي بلشت مع إنه كمان لسه الإشي محزن لأنه ناقص كل أجواء العيد.
Main purpose is to keep the security of all the prayers, especially in this day. 100 of officers of cops from the border officers and traffic officers on the field, and as I mentioned, our purpose is to keep the safety and allow freedom the Christians that we expect to get this holy church, the specular church here in this special day.
In light of recent clashes in Jerusalem between police and Palestinian protesters, however, putting up barricades and checkpoints to limit unvaccinated visitors in and of itself posed challenges. Police reportedly getting rough with small pockets of visitors over a handful of various issues. Though that said, many photos from the ceremony also show police mixing appropriately into the crowds to do their work. A police statement explaining that securing an event like this is a complex and challenging task, adding that police and border police officers are determined and motivated to carry out their mission while showing sensitivity to the needs of the many visitors and believers who frequent the area. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast with Hannah Rifkin.
Starting off the week with clear skies, lows this evening between 15 to 18 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow, highs will be mostly in the 30s, though the Haifa and Tel Aviv areas are calling for slightly cooler weather in the 20s.
That's it for today's news. And once again, please, if you're able to, donate blood or money to Magen David Adom services who are still helping in the aftermath of the Mount Meron stampede. And for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as to our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Meron. Be well. Thank you so much for watching.